You know, if you're gonna do this work, there's a way to do it, and good intent doesn't fucking matter when it comes down to it. You know, like it doesn't matter. Like when you have Renee Bach going to Uganda to opening up a hospital with zero medical training, which resulted on over 100 Ugandan children dying. And now she's sitting in Virginia. I don't care what her intent was. I don't care that you meant to. You were out of place.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pretend doctor in Africa because you're white, right? Like you don't get that opportunity, right? Because you care so much about saving the world doesn't mean you leapfrog human rights without recognizing that our relationship to the environment is a reflection of our relationship to each other. You don't get to sit there and choose that like the soil is more important. The soil that is made of decomposed love and bodies and corpse. And you get to favor that over the people existing today? No, you don't get that privilege. That's the reality, is that we all want to be better, but we can't choose to be better with circumventing our privilege and our ego. We have to confront that, and that's the work of being better.
And so in the works of AGC, is that the goal? Is that the goal, to be confrontational about everything? Like, because essentially what I'm hearing is we're collectively picking up a narrative of omitting, a narrative of not wanting to hear certain truths, not wanting to hear certain stories. So in working with AGC, my viewpoint as just a consumer, previous to me even knowing you or like being on the Juneteenth broadcast, was the confrontational component, the bluntness, the brashness, the wanting to touch on one one line that is connecting all of us, those of us who are in the farmer struggle in America, which where we have lots of privilege, but struggle is still present, all the way down to various places through the global South. Is that the goal of AGC, to present those upfront narratives in a very brash, raw way?
I wish it wasn't. You know, I wish we didn't have to spend our time like speaking these hard truths. Like I wish that people ask the questions of themselves already. I wish people were committed to it. Like, you know, we founded this organization to celebrate the knowledge that exists in the grassroots community, to celebrate that unbridled ingenuity, which is why the peasant food web, who control 19% of agricultural land, yes, less than a fifth of the world's cultivated land, produce over 70% of our world's food consumed, while protecting 95% of biodiversity, supporting 2.4 billion people, 94% of the world's farms. Like, this is massive contribution. And like that feat of only controlling a slither of the land and yet outproducing industrial agriculture. And what Raj Patel says, if they can do that with every obstacle and barrier in their way, imagine what they could do if we tip the balance in their favor, right? That is the goal of a growing culture, which was to support local innovation and research, right? And to support this ingenuity that is creating the solutions that we need. Because you know what? Like, what isn't a part of agriculture? It's all there. And, you know, agriculture is a 10,000-year-old knee on the neck of the ones who grow food. We know that the first walls built in Mesopotamia and Wangzi and Tigris were not designed to keep outsiders out, but peasants in. The very first seeds sown at the agricultural revolution were not seeds of wheat. Throw your fucking books away if they tell you that. It was seeds of injustice and patriarchy and racism. And we are sipping on the wine of those fruits today. Look around. Look at the prison industrial complex. Look at neoliberalism. Drive down country roads and you'll see we planted this shit. And whether you're in India or the United States, suicide rates are at an all-time high amongst farmer demographics. A majority of the world's hungry are actually involved in agriculture. This is the reality. And like, I wish we don't have to lay down these bricks upon bricks of context and truth, because I wish that people would look around and ask these questions. Why am I centering on whiteness? Why am I centering on white farmer after white farmer when guess what? That's an outlier. The vast majority of farmers are not white. Why am I celebrated on landowners? The vast majority of farmers are not landowners. I wish we didn't have to talk about this. I wish we didn't have to truth tell when narratives about fixing the food system are void of farmer voices, or when they include them, they're just a white landowner and not peasant or migrant labor. They don't touch on these issues. I wish that we didn't have to spend that time talking about food sovereignty and what it means. But right now we live in a world where the people in control of the narrative, the people in control of this food movement, are people that have never been kidnapped. They've never had their land taken. They've never not been in control. And for them, like, a term like sovereignty is a hard pill to swallow. Like, they can understand pollution, they can understand cleaning up the oceans, they can understand building soil health, but sovereignty? What the fuck does that mean? Because for them to understand what not having sovereignty means is them understanding that everything they have ever consumed, everything they have ever benefited from, everything they have ever interacted with has been the result of injustice. And when you recognize that, damn right, your food becomes bitter. Your possessions become painful memories, and your privilege becomes guilt.
There's so much that I can say, and why I feel this conversation is so necessary for specifically people that are not farming to see is because you are speaking from the perspective of the farmer. And what I've seen as a farmer is that in a lot of these conversations about farming, about agriculture, about food distribution, farmers are not in those conversations. And therefore, we don't know how to speak about what we're going through. We only know how to survive it and keep moving forward. And so for me, as the farmer that I am, when I hear you speak, I hear my own narrative that I didn't even know how to articulate. Chris Newman has the same effect, where it's like you are really preaching because I am literally identifying with everything that you said. But my whole lived experience might be different from yours, but you know how to speak about it. My other note is that it's also so frightening for me because as an American Black farmer who is migrant, independent, and landless, it's terrifying to me that I can identify with farmers in the global South, even though my American nationality serves some level of privilege. And I think that speaks to how connected we all are. And I will say that in America, even farmers, we don't see how we impact other people globally. And I myself had to educate myself heavily this year on that, on how America, how me working on that conventional farm in the middle of California is affecting people that I don't even see and don't even know. And so I guess I just want to hear in your own words what you have witnessed or heard about how America's agricultural system is affecting others globally.
Oh, there's so many ways to go into this. I love this question. Yet, some ways fear it because
But give it to us raw.
there's so many directions here we can go into this. And this is something that actually, like, the direction I want to go in is something that we're working on and how to communicate. And it's been hard for us because we've been nervous of the interpretation of it. So we've been chipping away at the words and trying to understand how best to explain it, you know. But you know, the reality is that it's great. Like this year, we every week we've done the Hunger for Justice broadcast. Like every week, another group from all around the world, indigenous, smallholder, peasant, farmers, and activists all around the world are talking about food system change. And like what's really great is to be able to go back to that and to champion and to understand and to look through the lens of that broadcast and these voices, because there's so much that's revealed. And whether you're broadcast with Korean Women Peasants Association in Korea, or the Filipino peasant movement in Philippines, or UTT in Argentina, or the Maasai in Loliondo, Tanzania, like they are dealing with US actions and US policies every day of their lives. They're dealing with that. They're not afforded the opportunity to not have the United States in their narrative. The arms and the tentacles are in their pockets, in their fields, in their laws. Like, and so, like for me, there's this like painful situation of the localism. Not because I'm anti-localism. If you can, that's great. Let's shorten the supply chain. Let's support the community that we're around. Let's support our neighbors. Let's love. Let's build these vibrant rural economies all around the world. Like I believe that deep down. But localism out of context. Localism as it is right now means that the rich get to have pretty lives and eat healthy foods. And it means nothing for the rest. And like the communities that deserve that local sovereignty most are the ones last afforded the opportunity to build those local economies because they're being predated upon every day. And so when we advocate for these kind of actions, what happens is, you know, the suburbs around affluent cities get this privilege and get these rural green belts, and they have farmers markets with like pretty farmers, beautiful, pretty farmers. We've seen that. I'm like, damn. Homeboy is beautiful. I'm going to buy some asparagus. Like, I get that. But what's happening is we have a food system where West Africa produces almost 80% of the world's cacao, but gets less than 2% of the $100 billion revenue. I don't give a fuck if those farms are organic or regenerative. They still are getting exploited. And guess what the reality of that situation and that exploitation is? Chocolate is driven by child slave labor. Those policies, those free trade deals, those brands are based where? Slavery never ended, it was outsourced. You look at our food system, the plantation never ended. You don't need that plantation to be on your field anymore. Now it's Africa and Asia and Latin America, where people of color are producing the food, getting underpaid, under-recognized, undervalued. And guess where that wealth is going? To Chicago, San Francisco, LA, New York, to all white executive boards, executive teams, to white pockets. From a bird's eye view, they don't look much different. And that's the truth. And so it's hard for me to understand, because like a growing culture has always worked globally. And for a lot of people that like, they just know a growing culture. And that's because like in the last year and a half, we were like, all right, we have to do something in the United States because these people can't connect the dots without it. That nobody's going to start to understand or care about farmers and the liberation and the solidarity struggle, like until they can connect it here. So like we had to do what we didn't want to do, which was like put resources and energy here, right? Like we've been resisting that for 8 years. because there's a lot of energy and love going here. I mean, it's not enough, but it is a lot more than there's going around the world. And we wanted to address that because even today, like in a post quote unquote colonial world, for every dollar of aid going into Africa, $24 is taken out. Like this system still exists today. And so we have to address that, and we have to fight together, because when you understand that these peasants and these indigenous who are fighting for their sovereignty, they're fighting against our model, our intervention. You know, we're the proselytizers of the dogma of yield and this industrialization. We're pushing that down their throats. And so the question is how do we understand that their liberation is tied to ours? And how do we work together?
I couldn't agree more. I guess what's coming up for me is just wondering what it looks like for BIPOC farmers globally to speak to each other, to understand that, and to feel less lonely in this quote unquote post-colonial world. And for me, as a BIPOC farmer watching the Hunger for Justice series, is that for me, is educating myself as an American farmer on the illusions that I am fed through agricultural realms and media here, and unlearning those things. And also feeling solidarity with the struggle, but also like the love for the land, which somehow melts away all of the struggle that working with the land presents. I think that's been my biggest learning curve. Is I think for me in America, the Black community here questions why a Black American would return to soil if it's exploitation, if it's bad conditions and bad pay, etc. But when I see the global community, that's where I feel that unity sink in of like, this shit is hard as hell, but sometimes for some, there's no other choice. And I think hearing that busts my brain completely open, because for sure this is something I am choosing. And there are a plethora of other things that I could do because I am American in that sense. But then there are those that I hear on the Hunger for Justice series that express that same affinity, that same feeling, that same surge when you're working with soil. And it's real. The struggle that one goes through is real. So I just wanted to express immense gratitude for everybody on the AGC team, because I've heard it and I've felt it myself, the effects that all of the work that y'all do to get those stories out, to have farmers tell their own stories is amazing. It's beautiful and it's powerful, and it deserves to be uplifted and seen way more times 1,000. So I guess in conclusion, we could go one or two ways. You can like explicitly tell us about a little 2 to 5 minute story of how AGC has evolved since its, seed date, and, tell us a little bit about the team, and where some projects that are coming up and where AGC is headed. Or we can conclude on a note of like gratitude. What has AGC, or what has the team at AGC seen that just keeps them going and keeps the gratitude growing? You've spoken a lot about that, but just in a concentrated sense, in terms of doing this work and, not doing it for money, even though that is an immense need. What is maybe one of the components? But it's up to you. You can do both too.
I want to make sure that, people start to understand what what AGC is doing and what we want to do. Because it's not just about punk rock meets food system kind of truth telling and memes. It's different. What you learn as soon as you step outside of your bubble and your world is how little you are, how insignificant you are in the grand scheme. And too often nonprofits and organizations champion their solution as a one size fits all. They're nothing more than missionaries. We've seen that, and that's not our thing. And we mentioned pedagogy of the oppressed. That teaches that right there. And so what we do is we work in three ways. We raise capital and resources to grassroots groups so that they can inoculate and innovate the solutions that are changing the world. Because like you said, it's about the Chris Newmans, it's about the Trongs, it's about the mangas and KMP, it's about the Joe Jandais. These are the folks that are incubating the models that are going to transform the food system and save us all. They need resources untethered. And so we commit to that. We fundraise, we get them resources so that they can do what's best. We don't teach them what to do because no Puerto Rican Jew from New York needs to teach a damn thing about agriculture. The next thing we do is we connect groups because solidarity is global. We have to work together, and farmers in Mongolia need to learn from farmers in Madagascar who are learning from farmers in Mexico, and vice versa. We need to democratize information and collectivize innovation. And the final thing we do is narrative change, which is what most people see. They don't see the behind the scenes work. They don't see the way we collaborate with grassroots groups because we don't center ourselves. Our hands are up. We're a movement support organization. So we don't have a damn solution for y'all, but we can point to thousands who do, and they don't look like me. That's the way we operate. And we operate like that. And guess what? This model should not be an outlier, but it is. Because everybody in development has a damn ego. And because successful nonprofits circumvent everything. They can see the elephant in the savannah easier than the elephant in the damn room. And they get rewarded for that. And they wallow in their mediocrity, and they get funding and dollars to treat symptoms, not root causes. So this year, we're expanding. We're trying to grow out our global team. We're trying to take care of each other, get healthcare, and support our staff to be in solidarity and in service to the grassroots groups. Our partners are all over the world, peasants and indigenous farmers that we work with. And it's all different in Philippines, where 9 out of 10 farmers don't own their land. And like farmers speaking up against this are murdered. Every 4 days, another farmer is shot. These are our partner organizations and our brothers and our sisters. So we campaign against that. In East Africa, we're supporting women innovation because mitigating climate change is about addressing gender equality. And we're supporting that. Like in India, we're driving and supporting the largest commoning of biodiversity. This is 1,500 varieties of indigenous rice that are entered into the commons because you don't sell seed, you sell the product of seed. Seed is our collective ancestry, so everywhere our project looks different. And people say, so how, for every dollar I give, how many trees are fucking planted? How many wells are dug? How many inches of soil carbon is built? And it's like, forget that. Let's talk about how many farmers are de-objectified from a system that's designed to exploit them. Let's talk about the agency and the capacity that is raised. Let's talk about the 3 most powerful words in the language is I see you. And saying that to everyone who nurtures us every day, and about wallowing in that unbridled optimism and hope and faith that a food system designed and led by the ones who grow our food, a food system with farmers at the seat, at the very table they provide for, can take care of us all.
A fucking man. It's Loren. from HEC. You can stop the fucking recording now.